Greetings, everyone. We are discussing the draft policy proposal by the African National Congress, which is before its elective conference. You recall that in the last video we said that the elective conference adjourned to the 5th of January 2023, and we hope that the conference of the African National Congress is going to adopt the proposals as contained in the draft policy. So hoping that after the conference, when it finally concludes, this is going to become the policy of the ANC, which will then go through the legislative stages for it to become law. We are not sure at this stage how long that is going to happen for it to go through all those stages. Normally it takes about 18 months. The legislative process takes about 18 months. But because this has been under discussion even in Parliament, and also that there's an election coming up in 2024, this might be fast-tracked in the next 6 months. So let's look into maybe 3 sections in this policy document on what it means. We will in simple not go through the entire document, but look into the recommendations. We are sure you are familiar with the current Refugees Act, so I'm not going to discuss what the current Refugees Act is and then you compare with what changes are being recommended. We'll only go through the recommended policy changes. It says under the headline here says Session of Refugee Status Policy Recommendation. So here it recommends that if you are given a refugee status, you are in South Africa, you've been given a refugee status, a number of people are holders of refugee status from Burundi, from DRC, from Zimbabwe, from a number of countries. But it says the recommendation is that if the situation in your country has improved, the ANC government should not hesitate to collaborate with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and ambassadors concerned to repatriate people to their countries of origin. So if a holder of a refugee status, you are not in South Africa for life. If the situation in your country of origin improves, they will not hesitate to take you back to your country of origin. This can be done through voluntary repatriation, or they will repatriate you. They then give examples of countries like Botswana, Namibia, Zimbabwe that have done that through the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. So what is important to note is that if you are a holder of a refugee status, it's not a life thing in South Africa to say I'm now a refugee recognized in South Africa. I no longer stamp every 3 months or so my Section 22 document. I'm now a refugee status is for life. It is no longer for life. So the recommendation is that if the situation improves, you'll be repatriated. Let's then look into the second section, which is also of interest. Is under citizenship bill. So the recommendation here, policy recommendation by the ANC to its conference, it says, I quote, citizens' laws must be tightened to avoid undeserving foreign nationals becoming South African citizens by default and through fraudulent means, and in the process exploit the country for some criminal and underhand business activities. Close quote. They then go on and provide an analysis how other countries are dealing with the question of citizenship. Countries like the United States, Switzerland, Britain, and the others. So the proposal is to make it difficult for any foreign national to be granted South African citizenship. Let me read again here. I quote, the granting of citizenship to foreign nationals in any country is done in the national interest Most countries guard jealously the security of states, safety of its citizens, and their territorial integrity. The South African Citizenship Act provides for three main forms of citizenship, namely citizenship by birth, citizenship by descent, and citizenship by naturalization. Laws governing citizenship by naturalization must be completely overhauled by the ANC-led government to avoid the current abuse of the system, a close quote. So the recommendation is to overhaul the entire immigration law. What you know today as the immigration law or immigration act, which you can Google, it's available there. It is likely to change if, as we believe that the conference of the ANC is going to adopt this. It becomes and it become its policy. Once that happens, and then it goes through the normal parliamentary stages. Let's look into the last part, which we want to look into in this document, which is immigration. There's an Immigration Act, which of course you are also familiar with the Immigration Act. As I said, we will not read the Immigration Act, discuss it, but simple look into the recommendations here. I will read, quote, it is recommended that the so-called sponsored visa, relative visa, corporate visa, and the related visas should be done away with in the new policy framework. If a foreign national falls in love with a South African citizenship, their rights and consequences thereof are governed by other laws. I guess this is what they wanted to say. I think it's a typo error here. Governed by other laws such as the Marriages Act and the Children's Act. The issues should not be linked to immigration, close quote. So in other words, what has been happening over the years, excuse me, is that if your partner is South African, you apply for a sponsored visa for you to be granted a permit on the basis that your partner is South African. But the recommendation here is that this should not be linked to the Immigration Act. It should be dealt separately. You marry South African, you don't have to apply to be in South Africa on the basis that your partner is South African. That's a recommendation on Immigration Act. We know that a number of ZEP holders are applying for sponsored visa on the basis that their partners are South African. A number of people over the years, they've benefited from this permit regime because you are married to a South African. You then apply to a stage that you become a permanent resident in South Africa, some even assuming citizenship. But the policy recommendation on the immigration law or Immigration Act is that it should be separated, should be done away with, and then the second recommendation here, which is of interest, is the setting up of an immigration board. I will read, quote, as part of the complete overhaul of the system, the policy framework of the ANC-led government must provide for the establishment of the Immigration Board, which comprises representatives of the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, Labor and Employment, Health, Small Business, Tourism, Police, South African Revenue Services, Basic Education and Higher Education, International Relations and Cooperation, Defense and Military Veterans, and Director General of the Department of Home Affairs. The board must also comprise representatives of civil society and organized labor, including 4 individuals on the ground of expertise in administration, regulatory matters or immigration law control, application and enforcement, appointed by the Minister of Home Affairs. Given the overarching services rendered by the Department of Home Affairs that cut across many departments, the composition of the Immigration Board as proposed is the most appropriate step. Today, the country is facing challenging immigration issues which cannot be resolved by the Department of Home Affairs alone. As indicated above, groups are being formed with the agenda to deal with illegal immigrants. In other areas, violent clashes between citizens and foreign nationals are occurring on daily basis, close quote. So the proposal is the establishment of this board, which will sit immigration board, where representatives from different departments will be members of the immigration board, meaning that the issues of immigration will not be dealt with by the immigration department in the Department of Home Affairs alone, but there will be other stakeholders, the different departments, civil society, and other individuals appointed through their expertise. So this is some of the recommendations that are before the ANC as it will continue with its conference on the 5th of January 2023. And we expect that this is going to be adopted. As I conclude, as I was going through this document, it is going to be difficult for people of low skill to work in South Africa. I will discuss in the next video. I think there's also a section where the document calls on the branches of the African National Congress to assist in identifying undocumented migrants that are in South Africa, ensure that these undocumented migrants are deported. So it's going to be very, very challenging and difficult for undocumented migrants to work in South Africa. Maybe let me read this policy recommendation again, still under the Immigration Act. The ANC-led government must introduce legislation aimed at strengthening the powers of immigration officers and the inspectorate and make continuing training compulsory. The majority of members of the inspectorate must have legal qualifications, and they must have experience in policing, forensic investigation, data analyst, and other relevant fields. The recent publication of the National Labour Migration Policy, introducing quotas for employment of foreign nationals, will go a long way in diffusing the violence between South African citizens and foreign nationals over employment. A well-coordinated strategy of tracking down illegal foreigners must be developed, and it is the duty of every citizen to report unlawful activities, and the ANC branches must take the lead in this regard, close quote. So the proposal is that the ANC branches, which you remember, I think there was a statement by the ANC Johannesburg region, if I recall, where when it was analyzing the 2021 local government elections, it also cited the issue of migrants as a contributor to its loss in Johannesburg metro. So you will then have, as per recommendation here, the branches of the ANC linking this to the electoral question. So we're going to see a lot of activity where the issue of migration again will return as we build to the 2024 elections to the center stage, as branches of the ANC have been encouraged to be active, and other South African citizens to identify people that are not documented in South Africa, that is tracking down what is termed in this document illegal foreigners. So this is why we are saying it is going to be difficult if, as we expect, this document is going to be adopted. Then it goes through the parliamentary process, legislation. If then becomes law, it is going to be difficult for people of low skill to work. I'm not a lawyer. I will await the analysis of legal experts in terms of what this policy draft means in relation to the South African Constitution, whether it will require some of the recommendations, whether it will require the amendment of the Constitution so that the Department of Home Affairs and Government will not spend each day in court when it is being taken. At the end of the document, it also cites cases where the government is being taken to court by various groupings challenging some of the decisions that have been taken. So in the next video, we're then going to discuss the proposal to pull out from the other international conventions. We will discuss in the next video, but please share your views pertaining to this document. I'm not sure if I'm sure if you visit the website of the ANC, Google ANC, you will get this document. I'm trying to scroll back to give you the correct title, so that when you Google and look for this document for you to read, you are able to read. It is titled the Revised Peace and Stability Policy Discussion Paper on Migration. Remember, we said that the issues of migration are under the Peace and Stability Commission. So just Google revised Peace and Stability Policy Discussion Paper on Migration, and you can read it on your own. Please share your views, circulate this video, and please subscribe to this YouTube channel. Otherwise, continue to enjoy your holidays. We will discuss political matters on the 31st as we bid 2022 farewell as welcome 2023. Otherwise, stay safe wherever you are. Goodbye.